Welcome to Basic Brewing Radio for Thursday, February 21st, 2008. I'm James Spencer. Here at Basic Brewing Radio, we're all about home brewing. With this week, Steve Wilkes pinch hits in the interview segment to ask a nutritionist, is homebrew and beer in general good for you? Also, we check in on the efforts in Utah to pass legislation to legalize home brewing in that state. Well, if you're new to home brewing and would like to get into the hobby for the first time, check out our website, basicbrewing.com, where you can find archives of our audio and video podcasts and our DVDs to walk you through basic and more advanced brewing techniques. Well, let's break things up a little bit this week and get to the most urgent thing first. If you were listening last week, you heard Charlie Papazian and me talking about efforts going on right now to legalize home brewing in the state of Utah. Listener and home brewer Douglas Wawrzynski had written in to let me know of legislation that he was helping to initiate in the Utah State Legislature. Well, things are progressing with that legislation, so I asked Douglas to give us an update. Well, Douglas Wawrzynski, welcome to Basic Brewing Radio.
Well, thanks for having me.
Bring us up to speed. It was a week ago today, I think, that you emailed me saying that there was something up over there in Utah, but for those who didn't listen last week, kind of bring us up to speed.
Well, sure. We have ourselves our own bona fide House Bill 425 to legalize the hobby of home brewing in the state, finally. And what I've been doing, I've been working with my local House representative to sponsor a bill, and that's Representative Christine Johnson. She's been great. She had the bill presented before the House, and it went to the House Rules Committee. I think that's where it was when I last emailed you. After that, so there was some subtle rewording in the language of the statute, and it has now actually been scheduled to go before an initial committee. It's the House Government Operations Committee for the Utah Legislature, and they are going to essentially hear some comments from the public and then make an initial vote, and on the strength of that vote, it will either stop there or it will go on to the floor of the House for a full debate and vote.
Now, we're recording this on Wednesday, and you are scheduled to be one of the people going in front of the committee members tomorrow?
Yeah, that is correct. Yesterday afternoon, I received a phone call from Representative Johnson's office, and they invited me to attend tomorrow morning for Thursday and speak before the House committee to basically say what homebrewing is, what it means to me, and why I think this bill is important and what its strengths are. I'm going to be joined by at least Jamie Burnham from the Beer Nut and hopefully one or two others. And we do have unconfirmed reports that Gary Glass will be joining us from the American Homebrewers Association. I have spoken with him directly in the past. He's expressed his willingness to fly down and join us and speak before the House in support of the bill. Yesterday when I spoke with my representative's office, he mentioned that he was coming. Of course, I don't want to commit for Mr. Glass before I've had a direct opportunity to confirm with him, but it sounds pretty good. And if he is able to come down on such short notice, then that would be great. He's been a huge help all along the way, and I'd certainly love to have his help tomorrow.
Can you give us an idea? Are you able to kind of take a temperature of the lawmakers and kind of how we're doing in the process?
Well, all the representatives who have responded to me have been very enthusiastic about the bill, and so we do have a great deal of support. Now, there are a number of legislators out there who have very conservative ideals about alcohol in the state of Utah. As many Utahns will probably know, that there is some other legislation that is currently working its way through the state that would limit marketing of different types of alcohol. But I think that the strength for this bill is twofold, really. One, I think it's good to focus on that this has limiting language in it, saying that, you have to be 21 years of age to brew. I think that's actually language that's left out of the federal statute, and so that should appeal to some of the more conservative individuals in the legislature. Also, homebrewing is good to distinguish away from some of the other concerns. I think it's a great thing to say that it's a very private hobby. It's something people enjoy in the privacy of their home. They don't drink. Homebrewers don't drink to excess, and so there aren't concerns about drunk driving and marketing towards children, which are, I think, the purported concerns about alcohol in the state. And so while there are a number of conservative legislators that would be resistant to loosening alcohol laws for those reasons, it's those same reasons that make homebrewing appealing. And I think that the House, the committee that it's going before tomorrow, I've been told, is it's going to be a bit of a challenge. And so the importance is to really stress those things with that committee tomorrow. If we make it through to committee tomorrow, it's a major hurdle. It'll go on to the House, and the bill will have some great momentum. And I think the value is really and I think a lot of legislatures, even the ones that don't understand homebrewing, would be willing to concede that, if this is such a private thing and it's not something that, impacts the general public, then I have seen no reason to oppose it if I think that there are people in my, district that would support the bill. And so that's why it's important that homebrewers in Utah all across the state write their legislator to essentially get the topic on the radar and have these people that might otherwise assume that, homebrewing is a small thing and tell them no, I'm out here in southern Utah or northern Utah, and this is a hobby, and I want this to be something I'm allowed to do, within the four corners of the law. And I think that even though there may be some challenges before the legislature, I think that overall, if we just, if you talk a lot about the show about educating people about homebrewing, and I think that's, in 200 words or less, if you can educate a legislator about what homebrewing really is, I think even those that might oppose other alcohol loosening legislation would support this, because it really is. It doesn't cost anybody any money, and neighbors don't know you're a homebrewer, and so it's not really an in-your-face kind of hobby. I think it's something that it's a live and let live kind of thing. So certainly, all we need to really do is just get the word out. Make legislators understand what it is that we want, what homebrewing is, and give them an opportunity and give them a reason to vote yes in favor of the statute.
Yeah, after all, this isn't a law requiring people to homebrew.
Absolutely, that's absolutely correct. Basically what we're asking for is just to carve out a little exception for home production of brew so that you don't need a license to do it, which is really what makes homebrewing legal in this state right now, is that once you there's no law that says you can't homebrew. It simply says that if you're going to brew beer, you need to have a license, and if you're going to possess beer, it should have a tax stamp on it. Basically, the statute says, it's perfectly legal to, brew in small amounts and then to possess that home brew. And that's all we're asking for. It's just really a clarification on the law, carve out that exception for us, and let us enjoy our hobby.
And the situation right now, what is the situation right now? I mean, when you brew at home, are you afraid that the police are going to come knocking at your door, or is this just a law that is, not enforced, and you get kind of a wink and a nod that, it's not legally right to do, but if you don't cause trouble, we're not going to cause trouble?
Yeah, I think that's the major attitude. I think that, there's no police force out there looking to crack down on homebrewing. I think really the only risk that I would perceive is if you were going to get together with a couple of homebrewers and you got pulled over for a routine traffic stop and they found, unstamped alcohol in your car. That's probably the biggest risk that you're running. Is that like, well, what's this? Where did it come from? And then you got to answer all those awkward questions, and who knows where it would go from there. But by and large, we have, of course, the Beer Nut, our local beloved homebrew shop, has been in business for, over 10 years. They've been selling the ingredients and the equipment to brew beer in no uncertain terms all that time. So it's not as though there's a great sense of persecution, which incidentally is actually one of the challenges in motivating home brewers to get involved, is that this notion of, well, why not leave well enough alone? I'm home brewing. I don't see a problem with anyone trying to stop me from home brewing. And the argument that I've had to make with some home brewers is that, we're talking about your rights here. Why you shouldn't be okay with, being able to do something simply because no one's looking to catch you doing it. Personally, I'm a law student. It's very important that everything I do operates within the four corners of the law. I intend on graduating law school and applying for the Bar Association, which has a character and fitness portion of it, and that I essentially have to have people in my community sign off saying that, I'm a fine, upstanding, law-abiding citizen. And I have, it does trouble me a little bit that I have this hobby that, I find deeply satisfying, very relaxing. there's nothing more soothing than watching fermentation going crazy in the primary glass carboy. At the same time, I have to consider that what I'm doing isn't necessarily all above boards, and that's something that I'm trying to resolve, and was one of my major motivators for getting this thing rolling.
So the bottom line, is there still time for homebrewers in Utah who are listening to this podcast? Is there still time for them to have an input on the process, and how would they do that if there is time?
Well, there certainly is an opportunity to have an impact on this process. If they're listening to this on their way into the city on Thursday morning, certainly there's the committee meeting is open to the public, and it starts at 8:30, but we're thoroughly agenda for the day. So if you wanted to swing by the legislative office, and it's the West Building, room 20, you could swing by and speak your mind. You've got 2 minutes. This is open to the public. I mean, this is a democratic society. You say what you want. And beyond that, I mean, we're just talking about committee meeting tomorrow. I mentioned that it would be a big win, a good momentum for the statute if it goes through on Thursday, but it doesn't stop there. I mean, it's got to go back to the House, and it goes to what I was saying before about how it's valuable for people, no matter where they are in Utah, to email their own legislator and say, hey, this is something important to me. I'm your constituent. I vote, and I want my rights. And I think that if it gets past the committee, which I sincerely hope it will, and I think we've got a good chance to do so, it will then require the support of the full House. And that's when I think that people, we have a short legislative session here in Utah. It's only 40 days, and it ends in March 5th. So if you're thinking you'd like to send an email and get involved, I would advise you to do it ASAP, because time is of the essence. But really the most efficient way to do it is to get on the Utah legislature's website, find who your representative is. They have a nice little search tool where you can type in your address, and it tells you who your House rep is and tells you who your Senate rep is, and then it gives you their email address. And I would advise you just copy that email address into an email, send them an email. Legislators, like anybody else, some are better at checking their email than others. So the advice is to make your subject short and to the point. So in case that's all they're doing is reading subject lines, that you get your point across. Simply say, please support House Bill 425. And then, in the body of the email, say where you live, say I'm your constituent. Homebrewing is important to me. It's something that I want you to support. And just be, brief, be, polite. These are our legislators. They're working for us. And just, let them know that homebrewers are out there all over the state. And this is a right that we would like to have.
Well, I certainly wish you luck, and I really appreciate your keeping us in the loop, Douglas.
Well, I appreciate you getting the word out for me. This has been a great help, and I know from listening in the past that you've got listeners in Utah, so I hope this will help bolster some support for us.
Excellent. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Well, thanks again to Douglas. And Douglas has asked me to give the disclaimer that he is a law student and not a full lawyer, and that his comments about law in Utah are from the perspective of a homebrewing citizen and not an attorney. So consider that T crossed there, Douglas, and that I dotted. So if you're a homebrewer in the state of Utah, get out there on the web, find your state legislator's email address, and send them a polite, concise note encouraging them to look favorably on House Bill 425. And if you want more information, you can email Jamie Burnham at the Beer Nut in Salt Lake City at jamie@beernut.com. That's JAMIE @beernut.com. And if the law passes, Jamie says they're going to have a big statewide competition to celebrate, and I wouldn't be surprised if Basic Brewing was there to cover it. Good luck, everybody. Okay, let's take a quick dip into the mailbag before we go on to our second interview. And this is a dangerous precedent, by the way. 2 episodes in a row with 2 interviews. Brody from Powder Springs, Georgia writes, what process do you use for cleaning your beer glasses? I've been using baking soda with a soft sponge that has never been used with soap, then rinsing with hot water and letting drip dry. Do you think that's sufficient? I haven't had any problem with head retention or any off flavors that I would associate with a glass not properly cleaned. I just wanted to make sure so I can give the beer the cleanest container possible so as to properly taste. Well, Brody, here's an answer that may go against what some homebrewers and beer lovers do. as a practice. Some beer lovers wash their glasses to get them, quote, beer clean, unquote. In other words, they don't use soap or detergent, but rinse their glasses well to get them clean, but to avoid getting soap residue on the glass that might interfere with head retention. But I go in another direction. If you've ever gotten a glass in a bar that still had lipstick on it, you'll know that sometimes you just got to use soap to get oils and greases off glasses. And oils and greases are going to interfere with head retention too, as well as my appetite, frankly. So I personally wash my beer glasses with the rest of the dishes that have to be washed in the sink. Yes, we do have a dishwasher, but some things still get washed by hand. However, I am very cautious to rinse the glasses very, very well with hot water to get the soap residue off. I don't have any problem with head retention, and I know that no greasy lip prints are going to get between me and my beer, unless they're my own, of course, and I'm eating pizza while I'm drinking beer. And I know that goes against what some people do out there, but, you wrote to me. And so that's what I do. So I don't know, baking soda and a soft sponge, that may be enough. If they're getting clean, and your head retention is good and the beer tastes good, that may be good enough. But, I just go the standard dishwashing route. Kevin from Pittsburgh writes, someone asked about his hydrometer reading 1.002 in water. Kevin says, whenever I need to check the calibration of a hydrometer or refractometer, I have a simple method of making up a calibration solution. Place a flask or Pyrex cup on a gram scale and 0. Add 10 grams of DME, then enough water so that the total weight is 100 grams. And Kevin says, voila, you have a 10-degree Plato or 1040 specific gravity wort for calibration. Obviously, Kevin says, you may need to heat it a bit to get the DME dissolved and then either let it cool or adjust your hydrometer reading. He says if you use 20 grams DME and top up to 200 grams total weight, you end up with just under a cup of solution. Before heating, you might want to record the weight, and then if you accidentally boil off some water, you can top it up to get back to the 10-degree Plato wort. Kevin says he also uses this as a reliable method to make a starter. He puts a flask on the scale and then maybe 40 grams of dry malt extract, topped up to 500 grams in weight, and that works out to an 8-degree Plato or 1032 wort. And Kevin says after boiling a bit, you're good to go. Thanks, Kevin. I appreciate that. It's another way of looking at calibrating the hydrometer. Then there's this from Devin near Denver. Devin says, I've been thinking a lot lately about how to be more efficient and less wasteful / green throughout my brewing process without, of course, compromising the quality of the product. So Devin says, I'm curious how you and other folks handle things like cooling wort as quickly as possible, disposing of sanitizer solutions once they've lost their power, disposing of spent grains, disposing of boil kettle leftovers, and discarding spent yeast sludge following packaging. Devin says, I know that commercial breweries have defined processes for all this, but I wonder what our fellow homebrewers consider best practices in these areas. Well, that's a good question, Devin. Let's throw it out there to the listeners. What do you do to be more efficient in your brewing process, to save on ingredients or fuel costs, or to reuse or recycle ingredients in your brewing? If not for environmental reasons, for practical reasons, getting the most bang for your buck. Think about that and send an email to me, James at basicbrewing.com, or just fill out the contact form on basicbrewing.com. And if we get enough responses, it could make a good show topic. All right, my buddy Steve Wilkes has been doing some thinking lately on how to eat more healthy and to be more healthy. And since he's a home brewer and a beer lover, he wanted to know about how homebrew fits into the scheme of things. So Steve sat down with nutritionist Marjorie Fitch-Hilgenberg, director of the Didactic Program in Dietetics at the University of Arkansas in Fayetteville, to have a chat.
I'm here today with Marjorie Fitch-Hilgenberg, who is the Director of Dietetics at the University of Arkansas. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. It's good to be here, Steve.
You're welcome. Basic Brewing Radio is all about home brewing, and we try to encompass all of the aspects of home brewing, from making it to drinking it to enjoying it. And today we're going to talk about how we can enjoy it in a healthy lifestyle. And I thought from a presentation that you gave a couple of days ago for Student Affairs that I attended, you'd be the perfect person to talk to.
And I do like beer, so I guess I'm perfect.
You are perfect. That's great. So I thank you so much for taking your time out of your day to visit with all of us homebrewers. Let's talk about diet and beer. Mm-hmm. Can one drink beer in a healthy way?
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's like anything else. Nutritionists and dietitians, we always say in moderation and put that in quotes. And the key is to enjoy it. Do not overconsume. Remember that it has calories. Mm-hmm. And so if you're drinking beer, you may not want that big piece of chocolate cream pie for dessert, but use a healthier choice so that you don't suddenly gain a lot of weight if you're just starting to drink beer. Mm-hmm. But enjoying a beer, why not? It can be another type of alcoholic beverage, but the key is to not let that become your main source of nutrition and calories. Mm-hmm.
Now they in the old world, in Germany and places like that, they consider beer to be food, and they approach it as food. Mm-hmm. Contrast that with how our culture, how Americans approach alcohol in general, but beer in particular.
Alcoholic beverages and beer too are approached in the United States, or at least in our culture, as an add-on. It's not something that is so mainstream. Mm-hmm. When I was in Germany many years ago, it was just have a beer. Mm-hmm. And that was a beverage with dinner.
Right.
Here it seems as though there's a stigma attached to alcoholic beverages. Mm-hmm. That many people perceive that if you drink, it's a weakness. It's not something that I'm enjoying the flavor of it. But that little bit of alcohol can reduce stress and have some healthful benefits too. But and a lot of it has to, the views on alcohol have to do with religious interpretation of how alcohol should be used. Mm-hmm. But I still say Christ drank wine. There were alcoholic beverages long ago. There will continue to be alcoholic beverages. And so what I would like to see happen in the United States is a more responsible approach to drinking alcohol, mm-hmm. and not making it like something you have to do behind closed doors with the shades pulled.
Right.
And in certain areas, particularly in Bible belts, that's basically what you do.
Yeah, that's very true. Now, in the homebrewing community, of course, we don't do that.
That's good.
Because we've said to the world, we're making this stuff.
Yeah.
I think that one of the things I'd like to explore are the health benefits of the beer itself. So it's my understanding that beer is full of good brewer's yeast, has lots of vitamin B and things like that in it.
It depends upon the beer. It depends upon how it's brewed, and oftentimes a lot of the nutrients are filtered out. They just don't come through to the end product because while you're using all that good yeast and everything, it's going to be diluted. Mm-hmm. But we can start with, it does supply liquid, mm-hmm. which we need. It does supply calories, which everyone needs. There are some, and it's not universal. The nutrient content's not universal from one beer to the other.
Right.
Folic acid, for instance, is a vitamin or folate, that is definitely needed by men and women for cells to grow and multiply and differentiate. But just basically, it's something that's really good and we've got to have it. Without it, there can be all sorts of bad problems. And the folate content of beers may be anywhere from 40 micrograms up to 600 micrograms. And the nutrient requirement for females, for instance, is 400 micrograms a day.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So it can be a valuable source of some nutrients. And one of the things that folate does is help keep decrease homocysteine levels, which is implicated in heart disease.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a benefit there too. Some of the B vitamins that you find in brewer's yeast do come through, not in large quantities, but I don't expect any food to give 100% of all nutrients. So there can be some thiamine and some niacin and B6 and a few of those others in there.
Mm-hmm.
I look at beer from a nutritional standpoint, as something not so much as a major supplier of nutrients. And that goes with, any type of alcoholic beverage. But it can be enjoyed as part of the overall caloric content, but not to be relied on for nutrition. We tried that when I was a grad student, and it just didn't work.
You shouldn't drink a beer to get your vitamins for
right.
the day. But on the other hand, I would like to hear you talk a little bit about the difference between mass-produced beers, like Budweiser's and Coors and Miller's, that are pasteurized and highly filtered, and homemade beer, which is not filtered, and hasn't had all that stuff taken out of it. Now, I'm wondering what the difference is. Is that the difference between the folate at 5 and the folate at 600?
Yeah, it is in the total brewing process. And, by the time you pasteurize and those high temperatures that are there, many of the nutrients or vitamins are destroyed. They lose their activity. So when it comes to homebrewed, and I haven't seen a lot of data on nutrient content of home versus commercially brewed beer. So this is me trying to use my convoluted logic.
Sure.
If it's still in there, then you're going to have a higher nutrient content, particularly of those vitamins. One of the review articles I was reading on beer and the health aspects of it was talking about the nutrient deficiency disease beriberi. That's from thiamine deficiency, one of the B vitamins. And that in areas that drank beer, they saw less. It was reported that there was less of that particularly deficiency disease because they were getting it from the beer. But it wasn't an area that it was more homebrew, brewed type beer. So, when you get over there, then we're talking a difference in nutrition, and it can be more from a nutritional standpoint that you're going to be getting nutrients. As I say, I don't have hard data on one compared to the other, but if you're not filtering it out, it's going to be in there. Right.
That's very interesting. I also ran across something from the New England Journal of Medicine. It was a study that was published in November 1999, and just to paraphrase the summary, light to moderate beer drinking, that's up to 2 per day for the average American male, reduces the chance of stroke by 20%. Does that sound like a reasonable finding?
It does. I've seen that in other papers too. And, it doesn't work for everyone, but in that particular study, it was very concrete. They saw it. Wine has gotten most of the press, but what they're looking at is that in beer, you have many of the same positive health effects. And so we can go ahead and have beer, have your beverage of choice there, and get the reduction in risk of stroke, get that good HDL cholesterol or high density lipoproteins. Let's get that one right. Increased, which is the good stuff,
Right.
But there's a maximum effect. I mean, this is with consuming beer. It's not, well, if 2's good, 16 may be even better.
That's right.
Let's just have a 6-pack.
Mm-hmm.
You start negating the positive effects.
So at about 2 beers, you switched over from a healthy interaction inside your body to the alcohol and the calories overwhelming all the benefit.
Yeah. And I think that's one of the things that we have a tendency to do in our culture.
Oh, sure.
Yeah. It's like, well, if I can take 1 vitamin pill, why not take 2?
Yeah.
So we just have to realize there is going to be a maximum positive effect. And then all of those things like getting drunk, having a car accident, wrapping your car around a pole, killing yourself or someone else, by not being a responsible drinker, negates any good that you're going to get out of it. And there are some studies that looked at increases in certain types of cancer with increased alcohol consumption, and so there's a lot of different other bad things that can come along with excess consumption, not just wrapping yourself around a telephone pole. Sure,
yeah. Well, and that's the thing. I think one of the things that I've been really interested in is learning what an appropriate amount of beer or wine, it doesn't really matter, but we're talking about beer, is in our society, and you've referenced it several times. So give us some strategies for incorporating beer in a more healthy way. How can we enjoy it without it taking over?
I think one of the keys with enjoyment is to know why you're drinking. There are people that drink because they want to get the buzz. Now, they may not think they're drunk. They're not falling down.
Right.
But if they're feeling that nice little glow, if you that little then they're already impaired. And what you mentioned before, 2 beers for a male, 1 for a female, will get the positive benefits of the beer. Will also be a stress reducer, and but beyond that, you have to be really careful. The larger a person is, the more they can consume without being impaired. But that's a difficult game to play.
Right.
Because I know that if I'm tired, if I haven't had anything to eat yet, and I have a beer, that 1 beer can make me nice and rosy. Other times, if I'm relaxed before I do that and have it with a meal, the alcohol absorption is slowed down, and so the effects from the alcohol are also slowed and reduced. So if we're going to do responsible drinking, I think have it with food. Don't do it on an empty stomach, because alcohol is one of the things that is absorbed from the stomach. Most nutrients, they have to go into the small intestine to be absorbed. Alcohol starts just seeping right in.
I'll be darned.
Yeah. So having it with a meal, or if in just a casual atmosphere, if there's hors d'oeuvres or something, that's good to have something in your stomach before you start drinking. And but I think one of the best things that we can do is just be responsible to drink, enjoy it. If someone is going to overconsume, don't do it where you're going to be driving. Don't put other people in harm's way. But the main thing is just have something to eat.
So you have this kind of acute health risk of plowing your car into the embankment.
Yes.
But then you have what I'll call a chronic health risk of gaining that 1 or 2 pounds a year for 10 years, and pretty soon you are literally obese.
Yes.
And I don't mean pretty soon, but over time. And that
20 extra calories a day. Just 20. Over a year, 2 pounds.
Don't I know it?
So do I.
Yeah.
No, I'm very thin.
Actually, she is.
Yes.
So, and another positive thing about beer, I think, is that there's no salt in it.
That's right.
There's no salt.
The sodium content does vary, but it's not very high.
Yeah.
And one of the reports that I looked at, and it was just looking at an array of beers. One could be even labeled very low sodium, which is about 35 milligrams of sodium per serving, or whatever they were talking about, and then some go up to about 200. Now, I looked at some frozen peas, green peas, the other day, and I thought, well, these should be low in sodium, but they had been salt added, and I don't know why. To frozen peas,
yeah.
And a half cup of frozen peas had 220 milligrams of sodium. And I'm going, that's ridiculous. So 200 milligrams is actually not very much when you can have a couple of thousand a day.
Is that about is that about normal for a guy my size, 2,000 milligrams?
Oh,
salt?
That's probably going to be low. And we have to talk sodium because salt is half sodium, half chloride.
Right.
But most people will consume 3,000 to 4,000 milligrams. Most people can handle it. There are that group of people that have sodium-sensitive high blood pressure. But 200 milligrams in something, if you look at what's spread out over the whole day, isn't very much.
Let's talk a little bit about the difference between beers. So you can have what we call a session beer, which means you can have a lot of them in one session.
Yes.
Or you can have, at the other end of the scale, things like barley wines and old ales and imperial stouts. And these are these giant kind of holiday beers. Yeah. So what's the difference?
The main thing is the alcohol content that's going to be different. Now, some of them, depending upon how long they've the brewing process and how much yeast was used and things like that, it's going to vary in nutrient content. But when we talk about something that has 0.5% alcohol versus 10% alcohol, you can have a lot more quantity if you're just drinking that 0.5% beer than if you're drinking a 10% alcohol beer. Well, we're considering that those two beers you were talking about for a man, that's generally 3 to 6% alcohol they're considering. Right. So if you've got a 10% alcohol beer, you better cut that back to 1. Yeah. Yeah. So if you, but the main thing is look at the calories in a session beer, look at the amount of alcohol, and judge accordingly. And we'll end this with one note. In one of the papers that I read was talking about beer versus wine. Oh, yeah. And while the health benefits are very much the same, one to the other, it was talking about, well, wine drinkers live a healthier lifestyle. And I'm going, not necessarily. Those things just don't automatically come into play. And that beer drinkers also, they may smoke more. And I'm going, not necessarily. In today's society, more and more people are not smoking. Right. Yeah. But it was an interesting slant on the perception that wine drinkers just basically had a healthier lifestyle to begin with and ate healthier foods. And I guess beer drinkers are supposed to chug it and eat pork rinds. Yeah, that's a perception that we run across all the time. Yeah. We run across it in terms of if you go to a nice restaurant, the waiter or waitress will always know what wines are being featured. They'll be able to talk to you intelligently about them. They won't know the first thing about what beers they have. We have all of them. It's like, well, no, you don't. No. But and it's just such an interesting thing in our society, and that, well, you can just tell the cultural status of beer. Yes. And I order a beer when I go out because I prefer beer. Too many years in Wisconsin.
Yeah.
And so does my husband. And they'll always come, ask, oh, you're having salmon. Would you like this wine with it? No, but what do you have on draft?
Yep.
And they go, I don't know. And so we'll have a beer, and everyone around us will be drinking, some wine. But, hey, a good beer, better than wine any day.
Absolutely. It goes with food so much better.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Well, this has been very interesting. I so much appreciate your time today.
Well, it's been a pleasure.
I think that the great thing about homebrew is not only the hobby of making it, but the joy of enjoying it and learning to enjoy it in a very responsible and lifelong way, I think is a thing that we should all strive for. And I appreciate your help in helping us do that. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Well, thanks very much to Steve for getting together with Marjorie to get her input. Beer is a food, and it's always good to take a minute to think about what goes into our diets. And I think I'll have some beer to go into my diet. If you have brewing questions, show suggestions, or just want to say, hey, write to james@basicbrewing.com, or just fill out the contact form on basicbrewing.com. And please don't forget to tell us where you're from. I've almost stopped talking about the Brewer's Logbooks because, we may have 4 or 5 left. So if they disappear off the site, that's what's happened to them. They're gone. Check them out on our site, and also check out the new low-tech lagering and decoction mashing DVD. It's not so new anymore, is it? But in that DVD, you can see Steve do a single-step decoction mash and follow me through a lager fermentation in the middle of summer, where I don't use a dedicated chest freezer. There are also our original DVDs. In Basic Brewing Introduction to Extract Home Brewing, we walk you through the extract brewing process step by step from boiling to bottling. And in Basic Brewing Stepping into All Grain, we take you through the all grain process from milling your grain to collecting your wort. And you can check out our combo deals to save you a few bucks if you want to buy more than one DVD at a time. And you can also see a listing of the fine folks across the country who sell our DVDs on basicbrewing.com. And if there isn't a vendor in your area, you can order online in our new and improved online shop at basicbrewingshop.com. I don't guess it's as new as it used to be, but it's still improved, I guess. And we've also got hats and shirts, including our Go Forth and Flocculate shirt. And thanks to everybody who's continued to click on our Amazon.com link. We appreciate the support there. Our featured products this week that were purchased through the link are Secret Weapons for the Modern Drummer and, are you ready? Flat and Scruggs 1964 to 1969, which includes the themes to Green Acres, Petticoat Junction, and the Beverly Hillbillies. And tunes like Jethro's a Powerful Man and What a Great Doctor Granny Is. But I didn't see my favorite Flat and Scruggs song, and that's Pearl, 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 Don't Give Your Love to Earl. What can I say? I'm from Hot Springs, Arkansas, and I grew up loving the Beverly Hillbillies. And Hot Springs was mentioned on the Beverly Hillbillies once. Just a little trivia that only a few of you care about. Thanks again, everybody, and remember, I can't tell who bought what. So no worries there. Just click on the Amazon.com logo on our site the next time you feel like Amazon shopping. We appreciate your support. And that's all until next week. Till then, thanks for listening, everybody. I'm James Spencer. Production help for Basic Brewing Radio, and our website is provided by Kelly Dodson. Basic Brewing Radio is a production of Active Voicing. We'll talk to you next time, everybody. Fabisham.